I am out here in Concord, Massachusetts at the Walden Pond State Reservation with my good friend Henry David Thoreau. So, Thoreau was born in 1817 and he died in 1872, both here in Concord, Mass. That's not to say he didn't travel, but he spent most of his time here. This is where he was born. This is where he decided to do his foray into nature, and the result of that is this book, Walden. His book, he doesn't hold it very well. Behind me, you can see a replica of the little cottage that he lived in when he went to the woods, so to speak. So, as you can see, it's not very big. It's got a place back there for wood. You can't go inside, but, it's really enough for someone to have, like, a bed and a, little kitchen. It's not huge. So, when he says he's living simply, he's not exaggerating, at least in some respects, because it's not like he's out here in a big, elaborate house enjoying the woods. So you see behind me, this is Walden Pond itself. So his house is actually like pretty close to this. He made his home close to the pond because he enjoyed the serenity of the water. He says this is not a good fishing pond. I don't know how it stands now, but it wasn't something that provided a lot of sustenance to him. But this was sort of the main area of his, of his retreat. And if you look at it, it really is quite beautiful. So you have to appreciate the sort of views that he had when he was contemplating nature. One of Thoreau's most famous lines happens on page 97. I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and to see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. So to understand this quote, you first have to understand transcendentalism, which we talked about a little bit with civil disobedience. Remember, transcendentalism is the school of thought that Henry David Thoreau was a part of, partially inspired by his mentor, Ralph Waldo Emerson. One of its big things was the beauty and the importance of nature. So if Thoreau had spent his whole life in a city like Boston, doing academic things, he feels like he would have wasted his life had he not come to the woods to live intentionally, is probably the kind of language we'd use now, right? Like doing things. There are mosquitoes already. Doing things intentionally and living with purpose, really listening to nature around him. Now, I can't really do that for you out here because this place is pretty crowded. I'm really surprised, actually, given what day it is. But the idea is that he was able to kind of get away from most people, and as we'll talk about, not everyone. Yes, his mom did his laundry, and yes, he had neighbors that would come and visit every now and then, but getting away from the hustle and bustle of the city and really just like sitting and contemplating nature and its beauty, which is like, really living your values. If you're going to say nature is important, then you better spend some time with nature and you better think about protecting it. Another section you're reading is about solitude. And as I mentioned, Thoreau wasn't exactly alone when he was out here. For the most part, people did come and visit, but not as often as you might think, not as often as you might want people to visit. And I think it's helpful to reflect on solitude when we think about the pandemic. Obviously, I'm not very alone here. I keep running into people, but in general, we've been very alone for the past year. Even if you're at college, you gotta keep 6 feet apart. And I do wonder if Thoreau would praise the kind of solitude that we've been going through, or if he would see it as like this level of isolation is more a symptom of having the kind of society that we do, rather than this working together cooperation thing that he more or less hopes for. Because remember, he does have his mentor, Ralph Waldo Emerson, so he's not, a lone wolf, so to speak. But his neighbors do get on his nerves, and yeah, being around a bunch of people gets on my nerves too, but the past years really made me think that there are certain kinds and degrees of solitude that we should consider when thinking about its virtues. As you read Walden, and again, we're just reading selections, so check Canvas for details. I want you to keep in mind that Thoreau's main message is not, to abandon society and go live in the woods, and that would be the best thing for all of us. The main point he's trying to make, there are so many mosquitoes, just FYI. The main point he's trying to make is that we should live simply. We should find ways to incorporate simplicity in our lives, because if we don't, we find ourselves preoccupied by things that don't matter, like running around to meetings, or how many social media likes you get or don't get or give, I suppose, right? And these are not the important things according to Thoreau. If you don't think about simplicity, if you don't try to eliminate unnecessary stressors and preoccupations in your life, then what kind of life is that? What kind of life is it if I'm constantly checking Instagram to see how many people liked my post today? Like, I could be out here in nature enjoying the one moment of quiet I've had all day. That's nice. I could go out on the boat on my lake with Elliot and enjoy my time with him, and definitely can't check my phone during that time. Do I really need all the finest, nicest things? Like, I need a decent computer, but do I need the best computer? No, not really, right? And so he's asking us to reflect on what's truly important, because if we're too focused on all these petty details, then we lose sight of the things that really matter. And one of those things for him is God. Like, where do you find God? In nature, for sure. You might think you find God in other people. I don't know that Thoreau would agree with you. That doesn't mean he's right. So how can we contemplate God? How can we contemplate truth if we think about back to Aristotle and Plato? Remember, transcendentalists love Plato. And for someone to practice contemplation, they can't be caught up in the minutia of everyday life. They have to have space to have contemplation, mental space to have contemplation, time to sit and think, which Thoreau thought was very important. Now, of course, you can't control how busy you are sometimes, like, that's life. And Thoreau had a bunch of privileges that helped him be able to come out in the woods and spend time on this beautiful lake and contemplate life. That's the facts. But even those of us without the same privileges of Thoreau can still think about ways that simplifying our lives might be worthwhile and give us more time for ourselves. If you're into mindfulness, that's the kind of thing Thoreau would have been excited about. Give us time to go to therapy even, right? Unclear how you'd feel about that, but it seems like a step in the right direction, right? Go on a hike. Not necessarily here, it's a little bit of a drive, but go on a hike somewhere, These are the things that we can do in our lives, despite the fact that we're much busier and less privileged than Thoreau was when he went and built the cabin in the woods.